Welcome to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzaro-Mosi Thurlow scale,
or MOTS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Lost Signals Reviews Film and Television. Prepare to float as we discuss It Chapter 2. I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer, here with Christopher Morgan.
Good evening.
And Scott Thurlow.
Do not touch that gray water, man.
And does someone have a funny logline for us?
That would be me.
All right, Chris, go on ahead.
It too, Brute?
Oh, good lord.
Spirit of puns. That's what scares us the most.
Yes. So I'm going to go into the plot. It's 27 years later, and Pennywise returns to feast on a new generation of children. But the children from the previous movie, as adults now, decide to come back and finally defeat Pennywise once and for all. And they do. The end.
Yep.
Yay!
Pretty much the plot. They do almost video gamey stuff. Go find a token of your lost innocence or whatever.
Seriously.
I mean, all the...
Let's do a ritual. The bad shit.
As adults, they have to come back and face the challenges of their youth, including some challenges I didn't know they had from the first movie. But overall, I enjoy the movie. It's a long movie, but it didn't always feel that long.
I don't think it felt its time at all.
But towards the middle, I felt there is a sag. There's a couple of... particularly one secondary plot line involving the escaped mental patient / bully from the first, which I believe I never read the novel, but I believe in the original Tim Curry, he ends up killing one of the characters. And in this one, he doesn't. So he's completely superfluous to the story.
Up, yeah.
I don't feel that he added to them beating their bullies or they're like demons from their youth. No. He showed up, did a couple of jump scares, and then died.
Yeah, no.
Actually, he seemed to be the comic relief, to be honest with you.
And a lot of sense, except that they had straight up comic relief with in
a literal comic character.
Yeah. Oh, you mean with Bill Hader?
Yeah,
Hader. With the dog in the not very scary door,
which is hilarious because
comic relief.
Yeah, which is the whole thing about Pomeranians is. Because at one point he's like, can't it be a Pomeranian? Because as an advocate for pit bulls and Rottweilers, one of the things that we always talk about is like little dogs are more dangerous. And we had a pizza guy that used to come by who was terrified of dogs because a Pomeranian grabbed onto him, it wouldn't let go and almost tore his Achilles tendon. So I immediately, as soon as he said Pomeranian, I personally thought it was funny.
Well, I've dealt with them transforming into monsters prior. So, but nonetheless, there were a couple, again, superfluous subplots. There were a little bit of drag in the middle. I thought the ending was very strong and much, much better than the It TV show. And actually, they make Stephen King himself in playing Stan Lee in a way shows up to make fun of endings being bad.
Can I just say one thing? Yeah. Because we're on the comic relief, because there was a lot of Easter eggs in this one. And there's one Easter egg that I seem to be the only person in the theater who got it.
Be on the lookout for Easter eggs.
Yes. And the scene where the head falls off where it's supposed to be Stan, and the things come out, I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding. And I'm like... Because from the thing.
It's a reference to the thing, yeah.
And I leaned over to Rich and said it, and there's no reaction. As soon as Bill Hader said, you got to be fucking kidding, I was like, yes! And like nobody else in the theater got it. Certainly not the little shithead high schoolers that were next to me. So.
Well, they'll be killed by clowns.
In 27 years, they'll get it.
Yeah.
So, either way.
But did you get that?
Yes, of course.
Okay, good. Because if there's one person on this planet
I love the thing, of course. Like, the second it started growing spider things, it was like, it's already a reference. And when he said the line, like, it's even... It elevates it. But I do agree with what you said. I'm probably looking at it too, just because, yes, it didn't feel as long as the actual running time, Chris, but it does feel long. And I think the middle is like the weakest part of it because of that. Because like, yeah, they had to juggle like a lot of things, but that meant that sometimes it feels a little bloated.
It's weird because I felt that Ben's arc was underserved, considering how long this film is. That they served almost everyone else's arc.
Yeah.
Aside from him until the very end when they...
and even that felt like, maybe not rushed, but again, more condensed than it could have been.
And to be honest with you, that is actually why I'm giving it a 2, because first of all, I thought she had figured this shit out in the first film. And that she didn't figure it out at the beginning. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And I'm like,
Beverly?
Yeah, that Beverly couldn't figure out about Ben. and then exactly what you said, all of a sudden it's just like when Jeopardy strikes, you put them kind of together as the pair that's in peril, like reaching out for each other. I'm like, okay, you did nothing really with this except for her making googly eyes at Bill, thinking he was the one, and Ben longing at her. I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
He was, first of all, he was one of the more interesting characters.
He was interesting enough, but
yeah. But I really was more interested in him because I was more interested in him as a kid. That sounded really bad, but no. But as
take it out of context.
No,
folks.
but the thing was, he was interesting when he was a kid, and to me he was interesting as an adult because you see him at that board meeting at the beginning and you're so used to that dynamic being some corporate asshole, and right away he's got this pathos to him where he's just like, I want it to be a clubhouse. And I found him a very interesting character, that he had a lot of heart, and just to reinforce what you said, he was so underserved, I thought.
Except that he did turn into the adult version of that lumberjack guy that the statue they had in there. but almost all the other characters actually were very fleshed out. But again, I'm going to give it a 2 because it's weird, because I think they're basing a lot of, especially his character development, off of the character development they had in the first film.
Yeah.
But I can't judge it based on the first film. I have to judge his own film. And it wasn't as strong as the first film, but it still did well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a solid 2 is perfectly fine, and that's what I'm going to give it at least.
Okay. Chris, what are they trying to say in this film?
Oh, shit. Where's my therapist? Well, there's a lot of reconciliation. Obviously there's the whole thing about coming home again and dealing with the issues of your youth, overcoming, the childhood trauma, reconciling. I mean, this is like the most fucked up high school reunion, middle school reunion.
They're all fucked up.
Well, yeah, they are pretty much
because of dairy.
Because of, yeah. But it definitely, it is definitely that like returned. It's like kind of in a weird way return to innocence, but not being able to return to innocence, because they did find that when they found the clubhouse, I mean, there were certain times when they would remember things, they were kind of, when they had the restaurant, the meal at the Chinese restaurant, they seemed like adults, but once they got going, they seemed to revert emotionally. That there was that child of them, like they came to grips with their inner childhood. So, thematically, I would just it's basically reconciling the reconciliation between the child within you and the adult you have become.
I would love to see Freud's interpretation of this film.
You want to talk? Sometimes a spider's just a spider.
Should have gone with that.
And sometimes you marry your mother.
Yeah. Sometimes deadlights are just deadlights.
And sometimes you marry your father. Everyone in there is like...
I mean, that was very clearly like...
Sometimes a rusty iron pole is just a rusty iron pole.
Yeah. Hey, as long as you believe in it.
Yeah, if you believe it's a rusty iron pole. But, go on.
No, but there was some interesting musing in this on the nature of memories and your attachment to things, which was neat. And the farther you're away from home,
the hazier it
becomes because it's not immediate to you anymore. And then they come back, and slowly comes back to them. I don't think they said anything particularly deep, but there was kind of interesting musing.
A nice little layer on top of it. Yeah, I mean, I agree for the most part. I don't think there's much else you can say. The as embodied, we'll get to it in a second, but the it as embodied, or the deadlights, what have you, facing your demon/fears, again, childhood, deep-seated traumas, which were legitimate things.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's not that they had nothing to say. I'm going to give it probably a solid 1. It's just that it was nicely on top of the core narrative, I'll say.
It was. I feel like I said this to you when we left it. It's half a horror movie and half an action adventure. but it's sort of deeper than just a generic action adventure.
Yeah,
horror
for sure.
thing.
I agree with that.
I guess because of the Stephen King influence to it.
Yeah,
so I'm going to give it a 1.
It's got a bit more of a depth there, just not maybe the deepest thing, but it still certainly works well in the film and with the characters.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely going to give it a 1. I the one thing that these two films did really well is character. Even though we felt in this film Ben was underserved, I think they did a really good character work. And I think even Stephen King's cameo, which I read as soon as he walked in there, I'm like, I bet that's Stephen King.
Called it.
But the thing is, I thought that his role was even more than just a wink and a nod. I mean, I felt that
I think it was exactly a wink and a nod.
No,
to me,
but what I'm saying is the way it was portrayed. In other words, it wasn't like a Stan Lee cameo where it's like, oh, hey, it's Stan Lee.
Kind of.
I mean, it was like, hey, it's Stephen King, but he actually his character actually served a point as opposed to being superfluous.
I guess. I don't know if I fully agree with that, but I see what you mean. But I wasn't
in other words, it was a character and they put Stephen King in there as opposed to putting Stephen King in there because they needed a character.
Quick cameo, but it worked. It was fine, whatever.
Yeah, I just thought the character work in this was really, really well done.
But okay, yeah. I'm going with the 1 for themes pretty solidly.
And I guess one last thing to say about it, which is it's the idea is that you don't necessarily have to be tied to your history or damaged by your past. And sometimes you get like marrying your parents in a sense, an abusive husband on Bev's part. And Derry doesn't have to be succumb to this tragedy over and over and over again. That if the will
can be triumphed over,
break that.
Sure, you're right. That's there too. And like I said,
although they kind of deserve it for that mascot.
The beaver.
Yeah.
You don't like the beavers?
The beaver, that was awesome.
But anyway.
All right. So, Scott, would you like to talk about antagonists?
Sure. So like I mentioned, yeah, it's so technically the deadlight thing is a thing taken outside knowledge. Like it's a reoccurring like antagonistic force in many of Stephen King's works, and in this one it's personified like by Pennywise the clown, and then in the original becoming a claymation spider, and this one becoming a pretty cool looking clown spider, if you will. So yeah, I mean it's this otherworldly like evil force intent on causing fear and devouring humans, pretty much.
I was kind of wondering if Stephen King actually got that from the Dead Marshes and Two Towers with where they had like the deadlights.
Maybe, but like I'm just saying, like it's a recurring thing, and so like in universe of this story, yeah, it works pretty well because it preys on your your worst fears, your most innate ones. It and you've seen that in horror movies before, but I think it works in this one. Like it appears to you as whatever you fear the most, whatever disturbs you the most, and it works. Like and Bill Skarsgård, I think does a good job, like being creepy, being like off-putting, but also like somewhat not sympathetic, but like. You kind of like Pennywise the clown, even though you know he's completely evil.
He's charismatic.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that all works, and even the effects, maybe some style.
You don't lure little children into the sewers if you aren't a little charismatic.
If you don't have some kind of bits you, sure. But yeah, I mean, I think it worked pretty well. Certainly, the characters were like it set it up pretty nicely. Where even like Mike calling everybody and mentioning Derry, like they started to already like shake and Richie throws up and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think that it was well telegraphed, like what they were feeling and what they were fighting against. And yeah, it's a pretty good adversary, and I think it was portrayed well on all of the fronts. When anything that appears to you as like look pretty cool, the Paul Bunyan thing and like all that. So
what I liked though about it is they purposely made certain things look like artificial, like you would see like say the Paul Bunyan. There are a couple other things where it's just like this is obviously a model or it's obviously CGI. Yeah. But I believe that was the intent because in a lot of all the other stuff, they obviously had the know-how. But I think when you're looking at it, when you're looking at a childhood fear, these things materialize as they would.
Sure.
The scariest thing, to your point, I think for me in this was that what was it, New Kids on the Block or poster in the locker, because they did it. They made it unnatural. It's a memory almost that you're seeing. Yeah. Oh, it is a memory you're seeing. But it's Pennywise playing upon that. And
that's a good point.
It creeped me out because I was wondering, I knew it's one of the anticipation things that something's going to go weird and nothing happens with it. He appears. But just by that presence there, it creeped me out.
It was kind of a nice little payoff to when he thought it was Beth, and she's like, how are your friends? And he's like, no, and she was talking about the New Kids on the Block, in other words, he was preying on the fact that these were all this band in a weird way was all he
Terrifying,
had. Yeah. So, but it really they did a really nice job connecting all the little dots. I mean, I thought it was really. I agreed that Pennywise himself was more of a presence even when he wasn't there.
Also, I want to say that I think this movie did a really good job of making Pennywise a threat.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was sort of like the first one, I felt like he was, or maybe the scenes were shorter or something, or maybe because they were adults, they could handle it better. But he felt dangerous, and I didn't know when characters would die or not. And I was kind of on edge for most of the scenes because even though they're talented and adults, he's still a con demon.
It created a very nice tension there, and like you're like you said, you could still be like, I don't know if they're gonna make it still, or like not all of them at least. So yeah,
I mean, I definitely did feel the tension. I thought they did a great job with it. But the thing I liked about it is because they were older and they had experience with him, so it seemed like Pennywise was trying to scare them, and they didn't fall for it. So it's like Pennywise, like, all right, I got to change my game now. Like I get
what you mean.
I get that sense that Pennywise was changing his game, and then you get to the end and you realize that Pennywise only has so much in his bag of tricks because he wasn't really used to facing.
Yeah, actually, this might go to dialogue or something, but they did mention like they changed it and it changed them. So like they had some this weird like connection / like lattice attached to each other or something. So like they even mentioned like you said the dreamlike thing, maybe a little bit more themes where like. And even referenced Nightmare on Elm Street was playing at the theater in Derry, where like they're reliving like hazy memories because they don't remember what happened because they suppressed it because of the influence of it / Pennywise, and it said to them like, "I've been waiting for you," like you specifically.
Also, coming back to themes, identifying with the aggressor, because if you look at like with Beth marrying an abusive husband, marrying somebody who reminds you of your overbearing mother. I mean, that the whole the relationship with Pennywise was in order they had to start to think like him to become. So it's kind of like there is a certain amount of identifying with your aggressor in here.
As you grow up, you slowly become a Pennywise yourself. It's fine. Yes. Also, I would say another antagonist is small town
assholes.
Yeah. Whether they're
small town bigots.
Yeah.
Bullies.
Sure.
Not even bullies, just straight up like ignorant bastards.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's always going to be the case. But yeah, on all those fronts, I think the antagonistic force / elements were pretty well done.
Yeah, I'm actually giving it a pretty strong one.
Yep.
I think
absolutely.
he's one of the most memorable monsters.
It's pretty iconic,
recently.
yeah, for sure.
I agree.
All right, I'm going to go on to protagonists. So I'm going to count the Losers Club as the protagonist.
Yeah.
Because,
I agree.
I think that's fair.
and especially in this film, they do a good job of demonstrating all of them, aside from Ben, as we mentioned earlier.
We could have used a little bit more to him.
But I think Billy had a great arc. James McAvoy did a fantastic job in that role. And I really felt that, especially when he drowns Georgie at the end, is his signifying that I'm not afraid anymore.
Yeah, and it's come to terms. Yeah, for sure.
But Beverly has always been one of the more complex characters in this movie, and she continues to be so. Although she's facing a lot of the same fears that she has, but I guess all of them are in a way.
Yeah, the point.
Richie has an interesting where it turns out he's gay, which I don't know if that was. I know that wasn't in the.
I don't know if it was in the original novel or not.
But it was
it's sort of there.
Interesting
like, sure, nice
thing that a path they took with him, and was it Stu? Stu
Stanley. Which one? I'm trying to remember.
Well, the guy who commits suicide. Actually,
that's Stanley.
Stanley did his end. The letter.
Note, yeah.
Actually gave him a lot of interesting points, which I thought that I didn't read the novel, but I've seen the TV thing. They kind of didn't really have a good service to this character. And this one, having that end part really worked. And who's the other one?
Eddie.
Eddie was a very interesting one because he showed flashes of bravery, and then especially when he got stabbed in the face and stabbed the guy. That's badass.
Yeah.
And then he reverts a little bit. Then he moves. I think it was overall very well done. And Mike, how can I forget him?
Well, I was
has a very good But I think overall, the Losers Club was very fleshed out from both the first film, and they continued that way.
No, I agree pretty largely. Like, the casting was really a nice choice. They even, like, resembled their childhood selves, if you will, which I thought, like, went a long way to the believability in selling the characters. And yeah, collectively, like, I like how Mike's, like, the catalyst. He's the one who hasn't moved out of Derry, so he starts calling everybody up and, bringing them all together. And yeah, I agree that, like, while a few things could have been baked in the oven, if you will, a little bit more, for the most part, it worked really well, and I enjoyed them all as protagonists. And even when they focus, like, for example, the token collecting quest, I'm going to call it, where so everybody gets, like, a nice little slice of time in the film to, like, have a little focus just on them, and then at the end, like, you see how they relate all to each other. So yeah, pretty nicely done overall.
I agree. I like that Mike was the person who stayed in town and is haunted by, like, I
like how they explain, like, he does remember everything because he never left.
I mean, he literally and figuratively is haunted by the past. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's got all those Pennywise nightmares, plus he's got the whole thing of watching the town evolve and devolve when it comes to certain things like the movie theater.
And robbing Native Americans.
And oh yeah.
Sometimes you have to get the artifact to fight the enemy.
All right, another theme. It's just like
that was a theme.
The appropriation of the Native Americans in the United States.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To battle the horrific monsters from outer space.
Yeah.
All they really needed to do is run in like a pipeline through the around Derry.
Would have flushed it out pretty fast.
Yeah.
With that shit. But anyway.
That would have been a great ending.
Just them constructing it.
Right,
but yeah.
So yeah, one for everyone?
I think one for protagonists, yes sir.
Okay, Chris. Talk about secondary characters.
All right, secondary characters. It's really funny because right away, the two secondary characters that come immediately to mind are the little girl from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And as we always talked about, like, child actors, and I think we can all agree that they're either really great or grating. There's very little in the middle. And her and the little kid that Bill Hader yelled at the beginning, who ultimately died in the mirrors. I thought they were for their short time on screen, I actually did care about them. Like,
they were fine.
No, I thought they were memorable. What could have been little what's the word I'm looking for?
Only you would know that.
The disposable characters, like, somebody that
characters.
They could have just been anybody. They didn't need any kind of dimension or anything. And I thought those two did a really good job. Obviously, the comic, what I'm going to call the comic relief, the superfluous bully from the beginning.
Bowers, I believe, is his name.
Yeah. We didn't really, even though you didn't really need him.
He's okay.
Yeah, I
but
was
not narratively necessary, I guess we'll say.
And as I said before, the Stephen King cameo did not bother me. But I'm going to give it a 1 because I think even for however long or however little the secondary characters were on, they did give me a good sense of the town.
So I respect the 1, and I was almost going to give it a 1, except a couple points. The little girl who dies, actually, that is perfectly fine with me because it's reestablishing that not only is Pennywise still a threat, but he's also not particularly interested in the main characters. He's interested in continuing feeding, so he's doing other stuff. Yeah. It's not like he's solely focused on so that worked really well for me. Problem is the other little kid that dies in the maze. He was only there as a kind of mirror for Billy's growth as a character. So I had a slight issue with that. Not that it's terrible or by any means, but it's not.
It's obviously the case you're saying that too.
He as a character is more of a device than a character.
Well, yeah, he's definitely used for spite. Mm-hmm. But before, ironically enough, trying to save his life is what put a target on that little kid's head for Pennywise.
No, I think Pennywise was going to eat him anyway.
Well, he probably would have. He probably would have been a victim at some point. Mm-hmm. But the fact that, like, oh, here's how I can get under Billy's skin is he all of a sudden became...
It's a 2-for-1 special.
It's preying on Billy's fear of, like, letting down a
So,
child.
I mean, yeah, he was a plot device, but I also felt that, he didn't just, show up to be this random kid. that, like I said, they were two memorable characters, so I have to kind of give them credit for that.
So what are you giving it?
I'm probably going to leave 0-1 because I feel that the insane guy is superfluous in this one. And they're focusing so much on the main characters and Pennywise that everything else is
sort of this background filler.
And that's not a fault of the film because it's a long film anyway. I don't think they could have done much. I just think that you also have the two guys from the beginning. One
random assholes, but like that's just like setup scene too, kind of. They're not.
It's just they're fodder for have a kill count for Pennywise.
They were definitely fodder. Like I said, if we're going to count 3 secondary characters, it was obviously Stephen King as the antique store and the 2 kids, and I'm not counting Stephen King. Let's put it that way.
So I'm going to give it a softer 0, but still a 0 for this.
I was kind of wavering too. Like whatever I'm going to give it, either 1 or 0, it'll be soft. You know what I mean? Either way, like. So, like, I might just lean over the fence on your side, E, that, yeah, because of the nature of it, like, they didn't have a lot of time or space to fill out any more characters. So the ones that were there were perfectly fine, but they weren't, like, really anything special either. So, like...
Unless we count Derry as a whole as
now that I was going to bring that up as the other opposite end because you mentioned like the town. So yeah, like of course it feels like a real like town where like this unnatural shit's happening. So I think that was well done on that front. So yeah, I'm still kind of wavering, but my instinct / inclination is to lean towards a softer-ish 0, but I could be convinced of a 1.
My instincts on that as well because Derry itself. It feels like everything you know about Derry is through the main characters.
Yeah, it's not. It's definitely not a character like it was in The Distinguished Citizen.
Yes,
sure, that's a fair point, and I think maybe that's more evidence to push me to a 0 side. But still soft enough.
I respect the 1. I mean, I don't. Not like saying you're a fool for that. Yeah.
No, I mean because like I have to give credit to basically canon fodder who actually did leave an impression.
That's fair. Like I said, I could almost have been convinced, but I'm sticking with the 0.
Like if they were like the couple the one guy that got killed at the beginning, definitely.
Yeah.
They were right away set up to be.
Okay, Scott, on to you with dialogue.
Yeah, so I was going into this one also giving a 0, but again, not dead set on it, just because here's my major 2-3 points maybe. What was there was, serviceable enough, and I've worn out the welcome in that word, but I mean that's all I can really describe it as. However, within that there's also a bit more of exposition and that felt exposition-y. That I get it was necessary, but
what's hilarious is all the exposition's a lie basically.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point, but maybe that's sort of style, kind of like yes, you're right. It's a funny little thing.
That's funny.
I agree with you, but you don't get that till the very end anyway. So like leading up to it, like it's like okay, and it's like explaining like again. The other end of the coin is they're explaining why they can't remember things and why it's hazy, blah, blah, blah. But I'm saying it felt to me like a fucking Michael Crichtonish kind of thing, in a sense. And like I get it though, like you have to explain some things so that people understand what's going on to some degree. But for the most part, it just didn't really like do it for me. And even like some of the jokes didn't land that I think that they wanted them to land as hard as they did. So like I don't know, man. There's nothing wrong with it really, but I don't think it's strong enough or. To me, my assessment is deserving of a 1, which I might start off with a soft 0, and I'll open it up to you guys to speak about it now.
I mean, I wasn't like super impressed by the dialogue, but I thought Bill Hader did a fine job as Richie, and yeah, his jokes aren't always all that funny, but they've never been funny.
But I was gonna say he didn't write his own material.
The point of his character, I get it. Yes.
But like sometimes he is legitimately funny in this. And there are a couple of good quips. There are a couple of stuff that falls flat, yeah, but I think it's hit more than it missed. And for the most... perhaps I'm rewarding it for the television movie, is that the television movie was melodramatic and saccharine sweet often, which this one kind of avoided for the most part.
You're right about that. I agree with that. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm going to tell you the best, as adults, the best dialogue, the people who had the best dialogue were obviously Billy, Mike, Bill Hader's character, Richie, and funny enough, Ben. Actually, no. I mean, to be honest with you, I think the weakest dialogue as a character as an adult was Beth. Bev. Well, it's my wife. Sorry. Sorry, Beth. Bev. Well, they're both gingers. but I mean, to be honest with you, I thought Eddie. I thought, his dialogue was good. He was neurotic. At times it was a little over the top with him, but he worked well in context with Bill Hader's character. But I mean, the strongest dialogue, I think the dialogue his character gets is very underrated. And I'm not talking about the exposition stuff. I mean, just as the person who stayed behind. Him reaching out to these people he remembered, but they kind of remember his name and then things come into focus. I thought his dialogue really, and the way he delivered it, really reflected that.
What actually really impressed me about this film, dialogue-wise and performance-wise, is the mixture of the kids and the adults in scenes, and how you can tell the difference between their adult versions and kid versions, and how as adults, as they remember, they kind of start transitioning more and more into the child version of themselves.
Yeah, I
thought that was pretty clever.
Yeah, so I think now, having talked out a bit, that I might side in the same way I just did, but the other way, I might side with a softer one, but still one overall, because, yeah, it was by no means bad or terrible, and even though I felt some of the stuff maybe missed a bit more to me than it hit for you, E, I think overall you guys made fairly solid points that it'll get a 1. I'll give it a 1 at the end of the day.
That's on to
you, I believe.
Me, with style. Yeah. Like the best parts of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, they have a lot of fun with playing on fears.
No.
And I must say I don't think this was necessarily as scary as the first one was.
It wasn't as unnerving, I guess, is what I want to say about it too. Yeah.
But it was fun in a lot of ways. And a couple of the set pieces they came up with, when Eddie's mother strapped to the chair, and that scene was really well done. I'm trying to think of. I mean, they went back to a couple, when Ben is being buried alive with
in the clubhouse.
Bev being the blood in the bathroom, the Carrie type scene. It is like, and their connection afterwards when they break, the idea of the playing with the spatial temporal nature, Pennywise's powers were really well done in this.
Yeah, I largely agree. I think the shots themselves, like the compositions and just the general cinematography, look good. And yeah, the way they portrayed all that stuff, I think worked really well. I don't really have any complaints. I may say one thing for you, Chris, because there's something I don't actually remember much about. But just overall visually and as a whole, yeah, I think style was pretty effective. And that, like you said, E, that's some cool and interesting and well done, thought out set pieces.
As Ian said, I thought the transitions between the kids and the adults were fucking
that stuff worked really
seamless.
Well.
I mean, they were seamless. I mean, the only one that was an obligatory thing that kind of made me roll my eyes a little bit was them looking at themselves in the window, which they had.
Whatever.
They kind of had to have it.
That was total 80s.
Yeah.
That was so obligatory. But I actually did find this. Maybe unnerving is the right thing, because what Pennywise did throw at them really was kind of like, at what point, what is reality, what is not reality. I thought they did a really great job of subverting that. And spatial stuff, like I'm selectively claustrophobic, and you get me into a cave, like when they had to crawl through that thing, I'm like crawling into my seat. I thought stylistically they did a really, he did a really good job. I see, this is one thing about the first one was when they opened up, I'm like, oh, the cinematography is pretty much what you expect it would be. But I think he did that on purpose, because I thought the film was a well done movie. I thought the first one was really well done, and I think they carried that through on this one, where there's so much they could have gone over the top with. I think they stayed in the parameters really well and focused on doing what they needed to do really well, as opposed to trying to dazzle, let's say.
That's true. Except though the scene in the glass maze.
You did not like that?
No, I thought that was that dazzled me.
It was cool. Yeah,
when Pennywise breaks through as Billy's trying to get through.
Yeah.
Oh, that was really well done.
Yeah, I agree.
I thought you didn't like that. I was like, what? That was pretty cool.
That was great.
That was magnificent.
So let me ask you: do you guys remember a soundtrack at all? Now I remember the sound design, which was also really nice, but like the musical score wise, it just seems sort of.
Aside from the old woman's room, which is another great scene, but that was the trailer.
Yeah.
It was just generally ominous
like
music.
sounding music, right?
I was gonna say there were times where I noticed it. I thought, oh, this is really great, but there's other. I mean, like in other words, it was either like, oh my god, that's great, or it was just completely
it sort of was
forgettable in the background.
White noise to me. Like, so I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it was literally not memorable.
Yeah.
But everything else, like I said, like I think sound design, of course, is always going to be important in a film like this, and I think they pretty much nailed that. So, and for everything else, I'll give it a pretty strong 1. In fact.
Yeah.
And on to recommendation with Chris.
Yeah, I recommend it. To be honest with you, I walked out of it really liking it, and then today it's probably because I was busy doing some other stuff. But more we talk about it, I realize like I'm back to where I was last night when I left the theater. Like this is a quality film. It really is. I really want to see part 1 and part 2 together. Because I do, for any faults either one of these films have, it's not for being a bad film. It's not for. I don't. If there's any faults in these things, it might be because there's only so much you can realize based on the material.
That is the case.
But I really thought he knew. I really thought they knew how to showed restraint when they needed to, just to kind of like, as you said, with the mirror, the mirror, the hall and mirror scene was just incredible. It really was. So yeah, I highly recommend it. I think this is a very quality film. And God, to say something's a quality film nowadays seems atypical. I mean, because you sit there.
For horror.
Yeah, especially for horror. I mean, like a quality film. It's a solid film.
Yeah, man. So I do recommend it as well. I'm giving it a pretty solid 1. You could definitely see this without having seen the first. Of course,
I disagree completely.
Certainly helps if you do. But I do agree, Chris. I come to this lot. Kill Bill 1 and 2. You might as well watch them both all together, like back to back, or have a double feature or something. But yeah, as is, I still think they kept up, like you said, a lot of the positive aspects, elements of part 1, and just carried them through. And yeah, it was an enjoyable film to watch, and I might want to see it again. Like I certainly don't regret having seen it. Didn't suck in any way. And yeah, it was a pretty good early-ish season. Fall coming up on Halloween in a month or so. Horror adventure film, as you said.
Yeah, I really like the first one. I like this one a little bit less.
I do prefer the first one a little bit. Yeah, agree.
But I thought it was a good film. I don't regret seeing it. I think you need to have seen the first one.
I agree with you.
I mean, I don't want to pigeonhole rabbit holes, but yeah, I mean, it definitely helps a lot. But I think you can still stand on its own, but it just won't be as strong if you came into this blind, without any prior knowledge.
Seeing the first one, but
I still recommend it.
The first hour of the first one was like almost not quite, because but almost kind of like sitting through 8th grade again. Like the movie 8th grade that made me that made you cringe. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, it's a very true film.
Sure.
I mean, for a horror film, it's a very true film. I mean, I bought these characters, and to me, that's the most important thing about any film is the characters.
You know what's good though? There's not going to be an It Chapter 3, because hopefully not. It's just self-contained.
Yeah.
2 chapters.
The story's complete, and I think they capped it off really nicely.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll read out the scores.
What do we got there?
Chris, you're a generous soul by giving it a 9. Scott and I gave it 8s. Basically, the plot's good, but
not great.
Great. And secondary characters, while it's a packed film with protagonists, secondary characters really didn't do much to me, except Chris, who liked them.
If you look at,
I'm just doing my summation. I'm not. I'm not looking for
debate is over.
No, but
giving us a overview of 8.3,
which I think is pretty solid, pretty strong. Enough.
I agree, but as far as the secondary characters, considering that we were all on the fence, I think 2 of us giving it 0s and at least 1 of us giving it a 1 kind of balanced.
I said I don't begrudge your one there.
But I'm just saying, in terms of an overall fair score, I think that.
I have to go kill some kids. I'm Jonathan Manzer, here with Christopher Morgan.
Good night.
And Scott.
I have to go kill some motherfucking clowns. See you next time.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or mods?